Back when I was 8 years old, I think that's the last time I knew the concept of free time. And in that free time, I began reading. I started off with some soft books like the BFG and Wonder and The Homework Machine. And when I was through with those, I then moved on to heavier stuff like The Return of the Homework Machine. But anyway, my reading list did get more mature as time went on, and I found books like The Book Thief and 1984 and Pride and Prejudice. So anyway, skip ahead to around 2nd grade, and my mom signs me up for a book club. I was just thrilled. I just finished reading this book called The Tuesday Club Murders, and it's about a bunch of people who meet up every Tuesday to talk about dead people. And because the author was British, this club met up in a place that looked kind of like this. So imagine how I felt when we pulled up to the book club house and I walked in to find a classroom that looked more like this, with one of these on the walls. But my mom kind of saw this coming, so she'd already driven away. So it was too late for me to call for a rescue. So I went in anyway, and I sat down, and class started. And the teacher began handing out the first book that we would read together as a club. This, Jane Eyre, written by a woman with weird E's and dots in her name. And as I sat there trying secretly to figure out if it was Jane Eyre or Jane Eyre, the teacher said something that at the time struck me as extremely odd. She said, "Now kids, before you read the pages I set you for homework, I'd like you to find the corresponding page numbers in this second book that I'm going to hand out and read the second book first." Strange. And then she proceeded to hand out a book that would shortly bypass Return of the Homework Machine as my least favorite book ever. And that was this. Now, I've burnt my copy a long time ago, but this is the official SparkNotes webpage for Jane Eyre, and it's basically the same thing. It has everything. It's got summary, characters, literary devices. And so what we were supposed to do, in essence, was read the SparkNotes first, the actual book second, and then, because this was South Korea, guys, we had to write up an analysis paper that the teacher would then mark. So that night, as I sat in my room, 2 books in hand, I was torn. To do or not to do? I knew that reading the analysis would be the smart thing. It would be comforting to receive concrete proof of a truth within a novel, and as Virginia Woolf once said, to receive a nugget of pure truth to wrap up between the pages of my notebook and keep on the mantelpiece forever. I would be told what to think and to do by the leading experts in this field, and that would be easy. But something prevented me from reading the analysis right away. And I remember that I sat there for quite some time, thinking over what was the right thing to do in this situation. Well, come the next day of the meeting, and I turn up at the book club meeting without having read my SparkNotes on chapter 1 of Jane Eyre. I put my analysis paper on top of the teacher's desk along with all the other pages, and I kind of went like this and thought, that's done. Except, later that evening, my mom gets a call from the teacher. And the teacher says, "Miss Ko, we need to have a talk about your daughter's analysis on Jane Eyre." My mom goes, "Yes, go on." And the teacher's like, "Miss Ko, it's the single most fantastic analysis that I've ever seen." Surprisingly, that did not happen at all. No, it was a terrible analysis, and I'm really glad I don't remember most of it because it was that bad. But what I was doing there, I'm now going to propose that we start calling second guessing, which means to try to anticipate or predict the outcomes of something or an event through guesswork. And that was essentially what I was doing. I was trying to anticipate a book without first being told through SparkNotes or my teacher or any external source on what that book would be about. And it wasn't just a one-off deal. I didn't just do it with Jane Eyre and then succumb to the allure of SparkNotes. I did it with On the Road and Mrs. Dalloway and Beloved. And through all of these books, read long after I dropped out of that book club, I continued to grope about in the darkness, trying to second guess myself, the author's intentions, and the book's meaning. And by now, a question should have kind of started to insinuate itself in your head. And that question would be, well, just why on earth did you do this? What are you gaining from second guessing? Why did you do this? Why do you still continue to do this? And why do you believe that we should do this as well? Well, today, I'm going to try, in language as universal as possible, to explain to you why I believe, despite the numerous disadvantages that I'm sure you're all more than aware of, why I believe in second guessing and think you guys should too. A Danish philosopher named Søren Kierkegaard once said this about young people: "The youth is an existing doubter. Hovering in doubt and without a foothold for his life, he reaches out for the truth in order to exist in it." And that's how we are, me and you guys, when we start out. We're doubters, we're unsure. Our life is in that stage where everything is being challenged and changing and constantly shifting. And in the middle of all that fog, if something or someone comes along offering us some approximation of truth or certainty or some peer-reviewed consensus, like Jane Eyre's meaning is X, Y, and Z, then it's incredibly tempting to take that truth that someone else has found for us and accept it as our own, instead of having to go through the incredible drudgery of guessworking through a book all by ourselves. And that's because a good book is like a life, and just like life, it's unsure, ambiguous. You literally don't know what's going to be around the corner. And to navigate that uncertainty without a guide by your side is painful. But the thing is, guys, the art of learning how to think for yourself is lost when you stop second guessing and succumb to the allure of having someone else come along and tell you what this is all going to be about. Good books, their purpose and their meaning and their way of existence is to make you live life through another consciousness. And SparkNotes, LitCharts, even your well-meaning English teacher sometimes strips that value from your experience by telling you what they think that book's truth is going to be about. To stop second guessing, then, is therefore to forget how to appreciate the difference between you and other people. And that's got consequences everywhere, not just in critical thinking, but in places like learning how to build an individual that appreciates the difference between themselves and others. Because how are you going to understand that there are people in this world who are different from you, but are just as important as you, if you've never known and never learned what it's like to be in their shoes, to lead the life that they lead, to exist with their different thoughts and their different ways of existence and their different ways of expression? All those values of reading that people keep trying to press onto you, those won't work if you don't second guess. Don't work if you start believing what other people tell you to believe. A good book is the intimation of a life that you will never ever know on your own. And to not second guess is to sleepwalk through that life. Simon Schama, he's a great historian, he once said that War and Peace isn't a book you just read, it's a book you live. And today I'd like to extend that to cover every book. Every book is something that you live, and to live that according to someone else's instructions is to live life according to what somebody else tells you to. So please start second guessing. Start navigating your way through books on your own without the help of somebody else telling you this should be what you find in there. Start second guessing and discover what's the big deal that people keep talking about that reading has. Discover what SparkNotes has been taking away from you all this time. This has been me on the power of second guessing, and thank you so much for listening.